The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
Ooh, the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, Dr. Brian Sovryn here for a Sovryn Shorts where, we just cover the little things. Though, I gotta say, I don't know how little this is. And really, in some ways, dare I say, it's rather bold. And what we're talking about, I hinted at this about a week ago on Patreon-only content. It was during a Q&A. So if you're a Sovryn Tech patron, I hinted at this. And if you're not a Sovryn Tech patron, patreon.com/SovrynTech. Get your hookup. Great stuff happening, especially at the end of the month. We have our live Q&A that will be happening via the Discord server. Going to be a great time. And, well, there's other things coming the end of this month. But anyway, what we're talking about here in this Sovryn Short is DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo has decided to release a desktop browser. Now, that's not all. We might cover another bit of tech here as well. But this is the main thing I want to get into. Of course, in 2021, we have done our Ultimate series, which included the Ultimate browser. And basically, my recommendation was the Brave browser earlier in 2021. Now, the DuckDuckGo browser is, how am I going to recommend that? Because it's not coming out until 2022. I have a link in the show notes with more details. There's actually a lot of details we don't have. Because of that, I don't know that I'm going to be recommending it, when it gets released in 2022. Apparently it is in beta right now on macOS, and that speaks to some of the strange language. Like, there's unnecessarily vague language used by the marketing team from DuckDuckGo that I find to be, it's just weird. I don't know what they're trying to pull or say here. Because I know the first thing you're asking is, okay, DuckDuckGo is coming out with its own desktop web browser. They already have a mobile one, which is great, by the way, but we'll talk about that more in a second. So is it going to be, is it a fork of Chrome? Like, are they going to use, the new version of Gecko that Mozilla has put out for Firefox? Like, what are they using their own web engine? Are they going to use Trident again? Right? Like what are they using here? Well, that's where things I think get, it's not only vague at first, but then even when The Verge kind of got an answer out of them, and then they were just dancing around. So to be clear, I like DuckDuckGo. I use DuckDuckGo. I recommend DuckDuckGo all the time. The mobile browser, okay, and we'll talk about the desktop browser in a second. The mobile browser, especially for Android, is very good. Actually, right now, it's kind of my mainline browser that I use on my Android device. I do use it as my main browser because of a lot of the tracking protection that it includes. It ends up having, by default, an ad blocker. It's not as good an ad blocker as, say, uBlock Origin on Firefox for Android, but it's good enough. Now, it essentially just uses, like many browsers, minus Firefox for Android, and I guess the Tor browser, and maybe a couple others. But like most browsers on Android, it just uses Chrome, essentially as its backend. So in a real way, it's like a Chrome wrapper, okay? WRAPPER. So in a lot of ways, you're not really downloading like a wholly new web browser like you would be with Firefox. It's taking advantage of what the system already has. And there's advantages and disadvantages to that. The advantages are it's lightning fast, and it plays well, especially in Android, with a lot of the shareability and interoperability between apps that that Chrome does so well on Android because, I mean, in a million ways, like Chrome is Android, and vice versa. It not entirely. It's not like Chrome OS, but close. I mean, for example, just when you take a look, if you don't believe me, when you go to the Play Store and you're updating Chrome, notice how all of your apps shut down as soon as Chrome starts installing. Why? Because Chrome is the fucking backbone of that operating system. Just proving my point. But anyway, like that's fine. Now, and there's an advantage to that. The disadvantage is that all of the security flaws that come along with Chrome and Android affect any web browser that uses Chrome as its base on Android. Firefox for Android has a completely independent security system, or security certificates at that. So there's the advantage for using Firefox among some others. But I'm just bringing this up anyway. I really like DuckDuckGo on Android, and the reason I use it is it's about the simplest way. Without installing a bunch of other crap, it's about the simplest way of having DuckDuckGo set as my search engine, okay, on an Android device. Again, look, I'm running a Pixel 6. It's more stock. I am not doing Calyx OS. I'm not doing Graphene. I'm not doing, Lineage, right? I'm not doing any of that. It's a business phone. You get the deal. Okay. So it works really, really well for that. And again, it essentially, because of the way that it's set up, it essentially has an ad blocker built in, essentially. And there are some other features involved, which are nice. But that's the idea. Do I recommend, do I think Brave works great on Android? Yeah, absolutely I do. So does Firefox, if that's your bag. But also one of the best parts of using DuckDuckGo browser on Android is I don't have to, it doesn't even bother to ask me, would you like to create an account? No, because DuckDuckGo knows, no, we don't want to have an account for you. Okay. So I really like that. You just install it and use it and away you go. Just as Satan intended, no accounts. Anyway, so I like the mobile browser a lot. And I hope I've explained how the mobile browser works, that in effect, you're skinning Chrome on Android. Now, on iOS, because, the DuckDuckGo browser is available there as well, works the same way. But instead of Chromium, instead of Chrome as its base, it's Safari as its base. And iOS doesn't allow you to have any other rendering engine. So, like even Google Chrome ironically on iOS doesn't use Chromium, your Blink, which is, technically Google's, what they forked off of Chromium. It doesn't use that. It uses WebKit, which is what Safari runs off of for a rendering engine. Okay. And, again, there's advantages and disadvantages to that, right? Now so I hope you're hearing me applaud and recommend the use of DuckDuckGo, despite in what I'm about to say. So with the desktop browser, DuckDuckGo is doing the same exact thing. They're saying, well, here, let me read directly from DuckDuckGo's post. Okay. It's in their 2021 in review where they announce it. Here we go. And this is directly, was it Gabriel Weinberg, I think, who is the CEO. He says, like we've done on mobile, quote, like we've done on mobile, DuckDuckGo for desktop will redefine user expectations of everyday online privacy. No complicated settings, no misleading warnings, no levels of privacy protection, just robust privacy protection that works by default across search, browsing, email, and more. It's not a privacy browser. It's an everyday browsing app that respects your privacy because there's never a bad time to stop companies from spying on your search and browsing history. Instead of forking, okay, so let's break down that paragraph right there. That all sounds fine. And I get where they're coming from. They don't want it to be a bunch of complicated settings. They just want something that is respecting privacy, doing the best job that it can through, some interesting technological approaches of blocking trackers that they are doing. And like their rating system for sites and all, I mean, all fine and dandy. Like I don't hear anything wrong here. I think it's odd. Why not call it a privacy browser? Like what's the fucking harm in that? I think that's a little strange. Well, you don't want to be like thought of as like Brave or Firefox. You're trying to be something different. I mean, you're being something different. Well, we'll see come 2022 if they're going to have accounts or anything like that set up, to where you could like sync across devices, right? We'll see what happens there. I find it a little weird that they're not running with the term privacy browser, but okay. Let's go to the second paragraph. This is where things get muddled. Instead of forking Chromium or anything else, we're building our desktop app around the OS provided rendering engines, like on mobile, that's what they say, allowing us to strip away a lot of the unnecessary cruft and clutter that's accumulated over the years in major browsers. With our clean and simple interface combined with the beloved fire button from our mobile app, the fire button is what, torches your entire history instantly. I mean, that's nice. DuckDuckGo for reading on DuckDuckGo for desktop will be ready to become your new everyday browsing app. So they do expect you to use this all the time. It's not just like going to be a search app. Anyway, compared to Chrome, the DuckDuckGo app for desktop is cleaner, way more private, and early tests have found it significantly faster too. And I can believe that. All right, but here, that first sentence in the second paragraph is where there's trouble. And it says, instead of forking Chromium or anything else, we're building our desktop app around the OS provided rendering engines. See, this is the part that doesn't make sense. So it's all right. Well, okay. So it's already in beta test on Mac OS. Now I can understand what you might be wondering, like, wait, why the fuck are they beta testing on Mac OS? I could see a couple reasons. One of them being is that Mac OS was one of the first operating systems to system-wide support DuckDuckGo, which is great. The other advantage is, like if they wanted to test it out, see on Mac OS, it's true that they wouldn't be using Chromium, right? Because if you're going to use the OS-based rendering engine for Mac OS, that's WebKit, not Chromium. Chromium is based off of WebKit, but they're different. And really, Google Chrome is actually Blink, which itself is kind of based off of Chromium. Anyway, I don't mean to make you go cross-eyed here. But point being, so that's the truth for Mac OS. Great. Okay. But for Windows, and they did confirm there's going to be a version for Windows, Windows uses Chromium. like they're saying, instead of like forking Chromium or anything else, it sounds like they're saying they're not going to use Chromium, but then if you're using the OS-based rendering engine, I would assume that they mean they're going to use Edge, which is the OS, which is the browser and the built, which attached to the rendering engine, in Windows 10 and Windows 11. And that's Chrome. That's Chromium based. That's the big deal, right? That Microsoft Edge, announced a couple of years ago is that, we're getting away from, originally they had the Edge HTML web rendering engine. But then they switched over to Chromium just to be more compatible and to stop having to worry about writing their own code. So what is DuckDuckGo going to be on fucking Windows? This is, and The Verge got some kind of an answer where the person said, oh yeah, we're using WebView 1 and WebView 2 on Mac OS and on, and WebView 2 on Windows, but WebView 2 is just Chromium. So I don't know, I'm baffled. I don't understand what the hell they're saying. And I don't know why they're being why be coy about it? The only thing I can guess is they're trying to say that they're not Chrome while still technically they are, or, that they're not Chromium and they don't okay. When they say they want it to be an everyday, browser, and maybe this speaks to why they don't want to call it a privacy browser, is they want to get the everyday person. They want the layman using this, which I think is a laudable goal. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Keep it simple, and have it there for, for people. I mean, I did a Q&A on Patreon about this. Like, what are the simple things you can do? Just getting people off of say Google Chrome is a great thing, so kind of talking people over to a DuckDuckGo browser sounds fantastic. Especially when it's so simple and there's not a bunch of, login nonsense and everything else. Anyway, just maybe this is just marketing speak to get the normies, I don't mean that with disrespect. I'm just saying to get the everyday people the not so savvy to think that it's not Chrome, even though on Windows, I mean, on Mac, it's not. It'd be WebKit based. And, is that okay? Yeah, I've always said, if you use a Mac, fucking use Safari. I've been saying that for years. Since the beginning of Sovryn Tech, I've said, do that if you're using a Mac. I mean, I even recommended that even when I was really hot on Firefox. I still, on Mac, I said, yeah, use Safari. Safari's great. So, am I going to complain or am I going to say don't use DuckDuckGo on Mac? No, by all means, especially, it's not Chrome, or it's not Chromium based. That's great. But on Windows, I don't understand. I don't know what they're trying to pull and what they're trying to say. It's got to be some kind of marketing stunt, but it's a bad one because people like me, the tech savvy folk, and people like you, a lot of the listeners, you're the ones that your family or friends go to. Hey, what should I be using? What do you think about this? I saw this on whatever, Alphabet Soup News or channel. What do you think about that? And, we're the ones that recommend to people and that people, usually trust. And the language that DuckDuckGo is using, is real, in my opinion, it's ultimately fucking with their marketing because it's just making things confusing and it's causing people like us, the word of mouth, who are the best marketing you can have, it's causing us to question you. Like, what's your plan here, Jack? And this is like the first thing you have to answer. So I just find the whole thing fucking odd. But, DuckDuckGo is putting out, and actually if you go to the link in the show notes for the 2021 review, they're putting on a lot of really interesting technology. Like features, I guess you could say, into the search engine, as well as like the mobile browser itself. And really even beyond that, like I really, really dig. They came out with what they call email protection. But what this is, so actually I'll read right from it. Email protection, our free email forwarding service that removes trackers in your email and protects the privacy of your personal email address without asking you to change email providers. So now this is something you have to sign up for a wait list to get in on. I already have this and I love it. So I have an email address. I don't mind putting it out there. It's Sovryn, Sovryn, of course. It's just Sovryn at duck.com. Dynamite. That's easy to say and put out there. And it forwards to whatever email address I want it to forward to. And you can create, other ones. So I don't have to tell you Sovryn at duck.com. I can make other ones. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, Stallion, you just said, but isn't it great that DuckDuckGo doesn't want any accounts, doesn't want you to make an account. They're not asking you to make an account. When they set this up, okay, there are very simple things that they do that you request, and all of it, they don't store your emails or anything like that. All of it gets stored in RAM. So that way, once it's overwritten, it's gone. It's just fucking gone. Or when the server gets turned off, it's gone. It's not on a hard drive. Your email is not on a hard drive. This is not going through anything like that. It's running straight through RAM. It's the right way to do it. I like it. I mean, and this is something you can do with other email providers as well. I mean, I use Fastmail, been using Fastmail for years. You can make a million aliases. Okay, now that's not going to do anything about the tracking protection. That's the beauty that DuckDuckGo adds on with this. But, it's a way of, I mean, a fun thing to do is create an email address for every account that you set up. Or if you're going to stay at a hotel, make an email address that has the hotel's name in it. And again, you can make hundreds of emails. And the fun thing to do with this is you can tell, what company sold off your email information when you start getting spam and you see that it was, Hotel Royale at sovryntech.com, right? It's oh, it was that hotel that sold off my shit. And I mean, you can do fun things like that, right? When you can make a bunch of these aliases. But this is going a step further where it is removing trackers. And look, I know there's plenty of other ways to do it, but this is making it simple. That's DuckDuckGo's whole MO, is making it something that everybody can do. And I think that's a fine and wonderful thing. They've started some other stuff too. They're on Android, they have created a quasi VPN that does tracker blocking between apps. Like, so say that like an app wants to collect or is sending off or collecting such and so much information. When you have the DuckDuckGo mobile app installed on Android, and this might be for iOS as well, I'm not sure, but it will essentially, have a VPN connection, right? Like you'll see that key in the upper right-hand side that will block these apps from, sending out a lot of tracking data. Great. I love that. Work simply, one button and you're done. Like that's dynamite. I applaud a lot of the stuff that they're coming up with. It's interesting. A lot of these technologies are things that Firefox or Mozilla was talking about, having come out. And of course they have come out with their own VPN. But DuckDuckGo is really expanding here. And I think it's expanding in the right direction. It's sticking to privacy and, anti-tracking and security and all of that. I mean, I know in a way you could say that Firefox is already doing all of this, right, with anti-fingerprinting and everything else, and that you could effectively like run any app in Firefox as like a PWA. But we all know that Firefox and PWAs don't always play well together. But regardless, that's fine if you want to go that route. But this is a dead simple route, for we could argue, the less savvy or, everybody else. And again, it's fine for these kinds of things to exist in the market. And especially for it to just be one app that you install. So I like what DuckDuckGo is doing here. I think them creating a web browser when one could easily argue we don't need another web browser out there. And I can agree with that to some degree. I like the idea. I just feel really skittish about the way that they're selling this thing, about the way that they're marketing it. I don't get it. Like, it really feels like they're really confusing what it does. Like they just will not come out and say that it's using on Windows, that it's going to use Chromium, unless it's somehow not going to. But when you say you're using WebView 2, that's what you're doing. I don't care what name you want to put on it. We know what it is in the code, and that's Chromium. It's what Edge runs on. And I mean, the other issue is too, like with Windows 11, holy fuck, this is going to be, such a massive pain in the ass to set up as the default browser. We all know how much of a pain in the ass it is to set up a default browser in any way, on Windows 11 specifically on 11. I mean, I've told everybody, like, I've gone back to Windows 7. I popped it on a Skylake machine, and that's probably, on a somewhat primary machine that I have, that's what it's going to run for the rest of its fucking life. And when that machine breaks, I'll probably go out and find another inexpensive, Skylake or earlier computer, though Skylake's really where I like to stick because that's when they started to get like power consumption right. And I'll do it again that way. Or, maybe virtualization technology will get to such a mode where I would feel comfortable, running Windows and running some of the software I want to run, within a virtual machine on a Linux box, which, Linux is always going to be my mainstay. Well, I don't want to say always. You never know what's coming down, what could be coming out. I mean, I brought this up in a Q&A as well. I mean, BOS, or should I say, Haiku is what they call it, which is the open source version of BOS. They're on beta 3 as of 2021. Like that just came out in 2021. It's still in active development. That's fucking exciting. So I don't want to say that I'll always be on Linux, but I'm sure as fuck not going to be on Windows 11 or Windows 12. But, speaking of Linux, there is no language around that. There is no talk about Linux and the DuckDuckGo browser, which I think's a fucking shame, because I would think there's your built-in audience. If I was DuckDuckGo, well, there's a couple things I'd be doing here. Okay. One, I'd love to write a browser in assembly. If I have the money and the manpower, oh yeah, baby. Like we're going with a whole new engine, and all new software. I would not be going with, whatever the OS happens to have. I'd be doing that. Is that incredibly hard to do? Yep, it is. But that's what makes it worth doing. And I mean, look, I'm not surprised, okay, that DuckDuckGo is not doing that, because I mean, look, ultimately DuckDuckGo is Bing, right? With a privacy sheen, like, but it's just Bing. Like, I applaud Brave. Brave is doing their own search, and it's their own search. They're building that from the ground up. That's not Bing. That's not Google. That's no one else's search engine. That's theirs. So right now, with it in beta, like, it obviously doesn't work very well yet, but I still think it's a great thing for them to get it out there, proof of concept and so on. Anyway, so I would build a completely independent web browser, and would rock, my own rendering engine, whatever, or pick up, where other ones have left off, because there have been a lot developed over the years that just got left by the wayside, where you could just pick up the code, and run with it. The other thing I would do if I was DuckDuckGo is, like, I'd be working with, I don't know, maybe System 76 or, one of the Linux distros, maybe work with, like, even Linux Mint, work with the team there and make the DuckDuckGo browser the default browser that installs with, some, whatever distro of Linux that they happen to partner with, or hook up with Canonical. Really, I think that'd be a genius move, because then you have an immediate install base. And, maybe Linux people would be kind of pissed about it, but I don't know. I'm a hardcore Linux guy, and I think it's a wonderful idea. Now, granted, if it's just based on Chromium, okay, then I don't really want that, right? Because then you're essentially getting Chromium pre-installed, and I think there are valid concerns, around that. Which is part of the reason most Linux distros have Firefox there at the ready. I mean, there's plenty that will use, like, Chromium, not instead of Google Chrome. They'll just install the Chromium browser, and that, I get that. This is just all of this just comes off as really, really weird, and we're not going to know until we see it. But I wanted to do this Sovryn short just to temper expectations, because it's exciting in one sense, but then in the other, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you saying? like who are you talking to? What's your audience here? Like, what? It all just comes off as strange, and I'll leave it at that. We don't want Sovryn shorts. They're meant to be short. We don't want them to go too long. So I'm going to wrap this one up. More Sovryn tech to come, and I will see all of you, on the other side.